Their journey had taken them through the now somewhat familiar bustling heart of the city, but as the group headed along their planned route, the gleaming skyscrapers and neon lights of the megacorp districts began to fade behind them. The electric hum of advertisements and crowded marketplaces dwindled, replaced by a disquieting silence that grew heavier the further they travelled. The sky above the city was a sickly shade of yellow-grey, tinged with the haze of distant factory smoke and the faint glow of neon from the more populated districts of the city, though it was getting darker. Upon getting home and gearing up, they quickly discovered the coordinates provided by Sable Krynn took them to the heart of a disused, long-forgotten part of the city, and the group made it to the edge of the quiet residential district that served as the last bastion of civilization in this area, having just had a polite conversation with the two bored guards covering the checkpoint. "Why am I getting a sense of déjà vu?" Chio asked the others pointedly as they rounded the corner, out of sight of the guards, leaving the group finally alone and safe to talk openly in the dark, deserted alleyway. "This place gives me the creeps." "It isn't Scraphaven, at least," Nika pointed out, with a dry, humourless chuckle. "Though if this turns out to be another trap, I'm going to be very disappointed." "Yeah," Scifi agreed. "Wouldn't it be great if for once we went to an ominously creepy location and didn't get ambushed by something?" "Stranger things have happened," Jack laughed. "At least Krynn didn't tell me to come alone or unarmed to this meetup. That's pretty much a death sentence from, every movie ever." "Nor did she give you a specific time to show up, other than tonight," Allura added. "And she was rather vague on everything else in her letter, too." "It could be a test," Chio theorized, "to see what we do." "Yeah, that sounds about right," Scifi agreed. "But Sable Krynn also has a fat bounty on her too, from some of the most powerful people in the city. She's got to cover her own ass. Maybe that's another reason she's taken her time to set this up." "Maybe," Allura agreed. "That's why we're keeping this as neat to know." "So, who does know?" Nika asked. "Luvia, Vanya, and Critch. Nobody else," Allura answered. "If things go wrong tonight, they can get help." "At least we're in the city where that's possible, rather than the ass end of a spooky wilderness with angry mushrooms," Jack shrugged. "Maybe that'll be the next new thing on Korvshak's stuffer menu," Scifi quipped, deepening her voice to mock the advertisements. "Available now in limited stores. Introducing the new Angry Shroom Burger, stuffed with fresh artificial flavouring."
"That's scarily accurate," Chio giggled.
"So what can we expect from Krynn?" Jack asked, having asked the question a few times before over the past couple of weeks, but naturally asking again as the pre-game nerves kicked in.
"Not much is known about Krynn outside of her fame,"
Allura answered him with a patient smile, as they checked the corner and turned onto an abandoned street.
"She's something of an eccentric and known to be incredibly paranoid. Anything else is mere rumour, unfortunately, so we'll have to make our own impressions when we get there."
"Right. Sorry, I knew that," Jack sighed, bending down to scritch Dante behind the ears, as the dog bounded up to him and headbutted his leg. "I guess I don't like going into anything without knowing any details."
"Rest of us are right there with you," Nika agreed, "but I think we'll be alright. You don't hear of anything too bad happening around these parts."
"And what are these parts?" Jack asked, looking around at a few of the buildings, most of which looked like abandoned offices, though to his left he spotted the carcass of a cinema complex.
"The waning of corporate control," Chio shrugged. "If unimportant territory is not profitable to renovate, companies may just abandon it for greener pastures."
"Places like that all over the city and the hive station," Scifi added. "Then eventually people organize themselves and move in for whatever reason." "And the cycle starts anew," Jack finished. "I guess it makes sense." They continued down the broken road away from the lights of the city. Weeds poked out of the cracks in the tarmac, and gnarled tree roots covered the ground, with rough patches of faded concrete barely visible beneath the encroaching wilderness.
"There's a few life signs around," Chio informed them, as Jack spotted a pair of eyes lazily peering at them from a window before slowly disappearing. "But they don't appear to be hostile."
"Probably just homeless," Nika reasoned, "or just friends having fun. Honestly, I'm glad you're getting life signs. which means there's no squad of enemies that know of your abilities lying in wait.
We leave them be, and they'll leave us be, Allura agreed, as the buildings began to thin out and get smaller, with work buildings being replaced by suburban housing, some obviously long abandoned, but a few others clearly having residents. Not far from this, they stumbled upon a few small fields that looked like they were used as allotments, with a few crops growing, though they didn't mess with them, as they saw a few concerned looks from a crowd of locals before they moved on, eventually getting to a crossroads that curiously had a few destroyed security drones scattered around.
Shot, but not recently, Nika concluded, as she examined the scorch marks on one of them. Probably some gang thought it'd be funny.
Anything that we can use? Allura asked, only for the Kizzen to shake her head.
Nah, they've already been gutted, and we're not dragging the chassis with us, Nika snorted. Damn shame. They'd have been useful. As they moved on, Dante sniffed cautiously at the rusted drones, but soon trotted back to Jack's side, clearly uninterested. The team pressed forward, leaving the strange graveyard of forgotten machines behind. Further along their route, they came upon the remnants of a collapsed highway overpass. The massive slabs of concrete had crumbled into jagged piles, creating a makeshift tunnel only a few meters wide, and not having a better way forward, they decided to go through it, after checking for any ambush.
Looks like someone's been here recently, Nika said, pointing to the walls that were covered in graffiti, before emerging on the other side.
Yeah, this paint's fresh, Scifi confirmed, looking at one of the names that looked completely illegible to Jack. Not sure why they'd hide it here when there's ruins all around. Maybe it's part of some kind of challenge or something.
Maybe, Allura agreed with a smirk. We can take a break if you want to add your name.
Nah. Scifi shook her head. I'm not here to pick a fight, especially when people aren't going to see. Besides, we don't want people figuring out we came by, right?
True, the Eladri confirmed with a shrug, though it probably doesn't matter.
The further they travelled, the more the remnants of civilization faded into mostly overgrown thickets and clusters of twisted trees, though the signs of civilization were still there. If Jack had to guess, this was a once affluent part of town long ago, though the husks of the McMansions looked long looted. The air here felt heavy, and there was a peculiar stillness that made even the smallest sounds seem amplified, confirmed when Chio detected no life signs around.
Let's not linger around in the open, Nika whispered, as she gently put a hand on Chio's shoulder. There's nowhere for anyone to hide around here, but this place gives me the creeps.
Finally, the dense trees and thickets gave way to a wide open lot, as the group stepped onto the tarmac of a wide roadway, and they followed it to the coordinates. Soon enough, the remains of an old, overgrown parking area stretched out before them, leading up to the looming shadow of a huge building ahead of them. The structure was massive, with cracked walls and broken windows that stared out like hollow eyes. Faded signs still clung desperately to the facade, advertising brands and stores that had long since ceased to exist.
Shit, Scifi began, as she checked her comlink. I think this must have been a shopping mall. Coordinates lead right to it. I think you're right, Allura agreed, though I don't recall any further instructions.
Scifi quickly checked, then cursed. Yeah, we have a specific grid, but that's all the detail the instructions give us. No floor, no landmarks, no further instructions. Then I guess we're looking the old-fashioned way, Jack sighed, as he pulled out his bottle of water and took a sip. Explore the totally safe abandoned building until we find what we're looking for or until something unsavory finds us, right?
Sounds about right, Chio agreed. Likely a precaution on the part of Krynn.
I swear she better be useful, Jack grumped, though only half-heartedly. After their trip to see the Oracle bore no fruit, this was his next best hope. Though his hopes had been dashed once already.
No use waiting around, Nika snorted. Let's go.
Crossing the long-abandoned car park, they reached the main entrance. A set of tall glass doors, long since shattered, with jagged shards still clinging stubbornly to their frames. The doorway was framed with a few faded posters and billboards, advertising sales and events that seemed almost surreal now.
Damn, they don't build them like they used to, Scifi quipped,
her wings flickering nervously as she hopped inside, taking point. As they passed through the broken glass windows, Jack felt a sudden drop in temperature. The air inside was heavy and thick with dust, carrying the scent of mildew and decay.
"Solar," Allura muttered under her breath, as she threw up her dancing lights to hover above them, illuminating the dust-covered towers around them.
"Dante, you smell anything?" Jack asked, looking down at the dog, who just stared right back at him with bright eyes. "Guess not."
"No sign of anyone being here," Nika spoke, after crouching down and brushing the tiles with one of her fingers, lifting it up to show it caked in dust. "Chio? No life signs."
The Ilithi shook her head,
though I think it would be safe to assume Krynn would have done her research on us.
"Let me know if anyone spots a terminal or something," Scifi spoke up thoughtfully, looking about for something. "I can check and see if the local matrix is up, or at least for any power draw around here. Hard to hide when there's nobody else around."
"That's our best bet for narrowing the search. Everybody fan out as we move,"
Allura instructed softly, her voice barely more than a whisper, looking around and spotting the lack of potential cover.
"But make sure to stay within sight of one another, just in case."
They moved cautiously down the main atrium, which was flanked by rows of abandoned storefronts. Some had their metal gates still halfway pulled down. Others stood open with their contents long looted or decayed beyond recognition. But as they moved and checked, they found nothing of interest. A kids' play park sat in the crossroads section up ahead, with metal climbing frames that were heavily rusted, and a lone swing swaying gently, creaking in the silence, moved by an unseen draft. "Why couldn't Sable Krynn have picked out a less spooky meeting spot?" Scifi groaned. "Especially when we have to poke around."
"Nothing we can do about it," Allura sighed, patting the Skritter on the back. "Let's get this over with."
"Alright, seriously, where the hell is she?" Jack asked impatiently, his voice bouncing off the high ceiling as they came back to the crossroads, having checked all of the downstairs. "You'd think the woman would have at least left some kind of sign or something."
"Guess we're checking the upper floors too," Chio confirmed.
"Guess we are," Nika sighed. "Shit place to get caught out, but we don't have a choice." As they made their way toward the escalators, a faint sound reached Jack's ears. A low hum, barely audible beneath the oppressive silence. He turned his head, trying to pinpoint the source, but it seemed to echo from all around them. Dante's ears perked up, and he let out a low, cautious growl, his markings glowing faintly blue in the dim light. "You guys hear that?" Jack whispered, his hand instinctively moving to his gun. "Wait. Yeah, I think so," Scifi replied unsurely. "Where the hell's it coming from?"
"We've cleared everything else so far," Nika pointed out grimly. "Let's head up to the top. At least it'll give us a vantage point if nothing else."
The central escalators were frozen in place, covered in a thick layer of dust that revealed no tracks of any kind. Allura gestured for the group to stay close as they ascended the dusty escalator. The upper level stretched out before them, revealing a darkened food court and the hulking shadows of long-abandoned department stores. The buzzing sound grew ever so slightly louder, though Jack still didn't have a particular direction for the noise.
"You're definitely not imagining things," Chio confirmed,
her eyes narrowing as she tried to focus on the buzzing sound.
"Careful, it could be bait," Nika whispered. "Guns up."
"I think it gets louder that way." Scifi pointed past the food court, which led to a particularly collapsed wing marked by a faded sign that read Megazone, though several of the letters hung askew, with some having fallen away entirely. Taking point, Jack pushed through a set of cracked double doors before being immediately hit by the stench of old electronics, rotten beer, and long-forgotten industrial cleaner all at once. "Huh. Some kind of arcade," he observed, as he saw the large room filled with rows of darkened, dust-covered game cabinets. Their once bright screens now dim and lifeless. The only illumination came from Allura's dancing lights and Dante's glow, casting flickering shadows across the room.
"A strange place to bring us,"
Chio noted, as the Ilithi brought up the rear.
Wow. Wonder if any of these old things still work, Scifi whispered, as she kept an eye out for any movement. Let's move up, Allura ordered. The buzzing was much clearer now, a faint electronic humming noise that cut through the silence. Whatever it is, it's here. Woof, Dante quietly barked, and with a low, rumbling growl, he trotted toward the far corner of the room, where Jack noticed the shadows flickering unnaturally. He gestured for the team to follow, keeping close behind as they weaved between the rows of ancient game cabinets, most covered in grime and tagged with faded graffiti. They rounded a corner, and that's when they saw it. Right at the very end of a row of broken machines, one arcade cabinet stood out like a beacon. Unlike the others, this one was suspiciously pristine, its metal casing gleaming under a coat of fresh black paint, the screen glowing with a faint blue light. What the? Jack muttered, stepping closer as the machine's screen flickered to life, displaying a swirling logo and playing some kind of happy jingle. The cabinet itself had no markings or titles, just a simple joystick and a series of unlabeled buttons beneath the screen. As if in response to his words, the machine's screen abruptly changed, displaying a cryptic message. Welcome. Step forward. Well, that's totally not sus at all, Chio sarcastically pointed out. Aegis, Jack muttered under his breath, summoning his shield as he tentatively did as instructed, ready for this to be a trap. As he approached, he spotted a camera at the top of the arcade machine, pointing directly at him. Without warning, the screen flickered again, and this time the face of a woman appeared. From what Jack could tell, she had pale white skin, though most of the rest of her features were obscured by some kind of pixelated static. Her eyes, however, were clear, sharp, and piercing, taken in the group as if she could see them through the screen. Greetings, Jack and company, came a smooth, almost melodic voice, tinged with an undercurrent of relief. Sable Krynn, I presume? Allura asked as she stepped forward, her posture calm and composed as always. Forgive me, but we were expecting to meet you in person. Indeed. I am Sable Krynn, and were you really now, Princess Allura? The woman asked in amusement, before her pixelated smile narrowed as she focused her attention on the Eladri, with Allura's eyes widening at being called Princess. Jack crossed his arms, trying to appear nonchalant despite the growing tension. All right, Krynn, we're here and you wanted to meet. From what I understand, you may be able to help me. Yes. The image of Krynn nodded, and her smile seemed to grow warmer. I have an interest in outsiders and how they came to be among us. I will admit that my interest in you began as a mere curiosity, but since I first learned of you, I have learned greatly of your exploits, and know much of the good you have done for this city. You should be proud. If my talents can aid you in uncovering the mystery of your arrival in our realm of real space, with a possibility of returning to your native realm, I shall certainly assist you. Thank you, Jack nodded. I have compiled a dossier on you, based on what is publicly known, as well as other cases I am involved in, Krynn continued, though I will require some clarification. Special points of interest I have noted include the spawn of Nekton you discovered, the corrupting of the Oracle, the cult of the Destroyer, the events of the latest Killer Clown attack, and, most recently, your work for Corvin Enterprises. Jack could have sworn she gave a hint of a grimace at that last one, though if Krynn did, she didn't make a show of it. Yes. Jack nodded again. What did you need clarification on? I do not yet know, Krynn admitted. Your case is strange. Let's start with what I know of your arrival. You woke up in the Pallid Pit, which at the time was home to the Ravagers, publicly known as a gang affiliated with the cult of the Destroyer, at least until their status as a front for more senior cultists became known. That's right, Jack nodded. What was your last memory of your native plane? Krynn asked, taking notes.
I went to sleep in my room, then the next thing I know, I woke up in the pit, Jack answered.
So nothing you did, to your knowledge, brought you here? Krynn pondered thoughtfully. How long did you sleep for, would you say? Were you rested when you woke?
Jack began, thrown off slightly by the question. Maybe I got a few hours in? I was exhausted when I woke up, but I was definitely about to drop when I met the paladins of Astara.
I know that it was a divine command from Astara herself that her paladins drop everything and come to your rescue, Krynn added. I feel that is significant.
The clerics tried to commune with Astara about it, but they confirmed she had nothing to do with my arrival, but noticed it and wanted to help, Jack replied.
So they say, Krynn nodded thoughtfully. But the place itself has significance. I understand that House Malkar has taken over the district, and I was able to learn of its ties to the Gloom Paths. Did you find anything of interest down there?
Wait! Scifi suddenly spoke up. There was a ritual chamber down there. We got it all on camera.
And the Gloom Cauldron used to be down there too when we encountered the Prophet and the Skinsaw Slashers, Chio added.
Her words repeated verbally by Nika.
Though I suspect much of that chamber was destroyed in the explosion when Devil's Daughter teleported us out. Is the ritual chamber below the place you woke up at? At least, approximately? Krynn asked.
And the Skritter quickly skimmed through the data on her comlink, before nodding.
Send me that footage. I think that's key to working out why Jack appeared there of all places, Krynn instructed. And this Gloom Cauldron. I've read a report on it, I assume from your own investigations?
Yeah. What happened to that thing, by the way? Jack asked, looking to Chio.
The Temple of Hope now has it, the Alethi recalled. We learned everything we could from it, but it was far too dangerous to keep in the house when we started housing our classmates after the clown attack. But we still have our notes on it.
Fair enough, Jack shrugged.
It is possible that this artifact was a ritual component due to its prior proximity to the site, Krynn theorized. So learning the nature of the ritual is a key objective. However, the artifact didn't remain there forever. You discovered it for the first time in the hands of Dubaku, an ex-priest of Nekton who was originally chasing your bounty, Jack, before their objective seemingly changed towards assaulting the Oracle, though your actions prevented their destruction or harm.
Yeah, Jack began tentatively. We eventually learned that Dubaku was in the Thrall of Malakil, who had some kind of relay in the Pallid Pit.
Malakil is definitely involved in this somehow, Krynn agreed, but I don't know to what degree or extent. Either way, I believe Dubaku coming into possession of the Gloom Cauldron was an effort to scatter the components of the ritual, though I don't know why. However, there is far more to Dubaku than that.
How so? Jack asked.
Because, Krynn stated grimly, as she steepled her fingers. Dubaku assaulted the Oracle when he should have been lying in wait for you when Malakil locked you in the ancient metro system. This is a strange change of behavior, but the recordings you picked up are interesting.
Krynn did something from where she was, and the recording of Dubaku played out.
My lord, the other whisperer, it wants me to... Yes.
In all likelihood, the ravings of a madman about to die, Krynn noted sharply. But there's another working theory. Insane, but one I am willing to entertain considering the other factors at play. Dubaku hears the orders from Malakil, and the orders from another. This other whisperer they speak of.
What? Jack asked in confusion. Malakil and someone else fighting for control in Dubaku's head?
That's exactly what I'm saying, Krynn nodded, fully serious. Two masters, two objectives. Malakil wanted you dead, but the influence of this other master caused them to attack the Oracle instead.
You don't think Malakil and this other master are working together? Nika asked skeptically. In answer, Krynn played another recording of that encounter, this time of Malakil.
Unauthorized secondary presence detected. Unknown faction. Threat level. Extreme.
No. Krynn shook her head. This and my other conclusions point to non-cooperation.
Then how was this other master able to use Tabaku?
Scifi asked. I don't know. Krynn shook her head. But targeting the Oracle is telling, even if Tabaku failed.
Yeah, Jack nodded. Mr. Sparrow directed me to the Oracle to try and find answers, but when we got there it was a dead end. When we asked it questions it didn't have the answers. Then when we questioned it further it panicked, said there was something wrong with it.
Sable Krynn played another recording.
My knowledge and memories have been... How could this be? My essence has been corrupted. Someone has... What could possibly...
Specifically this, the detective pointed out. Not only that they had suffered harm that prevented you from getting answers, but implying that someone did it on purpose.
Yeah, Jack agreed, remembering his despair in that moment. At the time I didn't know what to think and I wasn't in a good place. It sucks, but it's a dead end, right? Not even the Oracle knew what had happened until that point. They said they didn't know when its corruption happened. They're a long-lived being, and even they couldn't give us any more information.
It may not be a dead end as you assume.
Krynn shook her head thoughtfully.
An Elder Tree is a very powerful being, and being able to affect one so profusely in this way requires an even greater level of power. It could have happened a long time ago, as you say, but that may not be the case. There's something else in reasonable proximity to the Oracle that also required immense power to summon.
The spawn of Nekton, Allura pointed out.
Correct, Krynn nodded. The close proximity of something else that requires a considerable amount of magical power cannot be ignored. It may just be a coincidence, but it is very possible that whoever summoned the spawn of Nekton is also responsible for what happened to the Oracle. The fact that Tabaku made a move for the Oracle after encountering the spawn lends credence to my theory.
The Temple of Hope is already looking for the summoner, Jack noted. You're saying they're likely involved in this somehow?
It's only a theory, Krynn stressed. It's possible it has nothing to do with you at all, but it's an avenue worth exploring. As for who it could be, that's a very important question. Several of the Elder Dragons in the city, for example, may have that kind of power, as do several of the top 10 bounties and many others. However, public investigations have limited many of the names that come to mind. I suspect an unknown, and your recent activities may have uncovered one. I've read the report you gave to the Temple of Hope, specifically the entity Jack encountered in the astral realm after destroying this... cocoon?
Yeah, Jack sighed. No idea what it was, but it kicked my ass before I got pulled back to reality.
I suspect you encountered a demon lord, Krynn grimaced. You were lucky to escape with your life.
Oh shit,
Nika cursed. Yes.
The avatar on the screen nodded slowly.
I very briefly considered you being one yourself when you first came to my attention, Jack, but this is the real deal. Demon lords are also powerful enough to pull this off, and many of them hide themselves as they grow in power to become galactic-level threats. So they're a suspect, Chio nodded. For now, Krynn agreed, but we also know the identity of someone who is known to be involved.
Sable Krynn noted.
Dr. Reyes Grine. His involvement with the killer clown is yet another mystery I intend to solve. However, my own efforts to find him have been fruitless.
But what does this all mean? Jack asked the detective.
That you're somehow involved in a dangerous plot of cataclysmic potential.
Krynn sighed, steepling her fingers.
And I have every intention of finding out what the specifics of that is. And if I can help you get home in the process, that'll be great too.
Well, at least we know a bit more now, Jack noted grimly.
There is now the question of my price.
Krynn suddenly interrupted. Huh? Jack asked, briefly surprised. You didn't mention it in your letter. How much are you asking for?
I'm not looking for money.
Krynn shook her head.
Our meeting today was paid for by the information I have learned from you. But if I am to perform an important service for you, you are to perform an important service for me."
"Okay," Jack asked. "What service?"
"Nothing now." Krynn shook her head. "Aside from your word that when I call on you and your team, you will perform the task I ask of you, and then you get what you need."
"That's not ominous at all," Nika pointed out.
"Hardly as ominous as one who hails from the Gossamer Valleys will be used to," Krynn retorted, and Nika's face went white at hearing her homeland being spoken of so casually. She'd never told anyone about that, or what had happened. Jack looked to the others, everyone nodding their agreement.
"All right, Krynn, you have a deal, but nothing stupid."
"It will be within your capabilities," Krynn smiled. "You have been a hero to this city, Jack Frost. Rest assured that what I ask of you shall be in the name of the greater good."
"All right," Jack nodded.
"One more thing," Krynn added. "I do not know if it pertains to this investigation, but something that Dubaku said is concerning."
Again, the recording played.
"We all heard his screams as the Whispering Lord was killed,"
the raving voice of Dubaku yelled out. "Yeah, I keep being told about how Nekton is apparently dead," Jack grumbled.
"Note the wording,"
Krynn pointed out.
"He said killed specifically, not simply dead. That is significant. It implies that something killed Nekton."
"Oh shit," Jack gasped.
"Yes," Krynn nodded, as she saw that all of them recognized the significance. "Something powerful enough to kill a god, and a spawn of Nekton summoned after the fact. This is huge, and I intend to find out everything I can."
"So what happens now?" Jack asked.
"Don't speak of this meeting to anybody," Krynn instructed, "and await my correspondence. I shall make inquiries and investigate, though you should not sit by idly. Conduct whatever investigation you see fit to."
"We will," Jack nodded.
"Then until next time, I wish you the best of luck," Krynn nodded, and the screen turned off.
"You too," Jack began, before the arcade machine suddenly exploded. He lurched back on reflex, but the payload wasn't a big one, as the arcade machine was bricked and turned to molten slag. "She could have just said goodbye the normal way," Scifi quipped.
"Not dramatic enough," Allura smiled, before her face grew serious. "Jack, are you okay?"
"Yeah, I think so," Jack sighed. "This is a hell of a lot to deal with."
"We should get back and organize our thoughts," Chia proposed. "Then work out our next steps."
"Dr. Grine," Jack said coldly. "He has a lot of answers. If we find him..."
"Yeah," Nika agreed. "Though he's gone to ground. He'll surface eventually." "Indeed," Allura nodded, "and we'll be ready when he does."
She motioned with her hands towards the way they came, as the group began the long trek back home.
"But right now, we should probably do our homework first."